Colon cancer almost never begins with pain. What usually happens is that it starts with small, silent changes, so subtle that many people overlook them for years. That is the real problem, because when pain finally appears, very often the disease is no longer in an early stage. Today we are going to talk precisely about that, how your body warns you in advance and which signals you need to learn to recognize in order to act on time. I'm Dr. Gabriel Mena, and I welcome you to my channel. Here we talk about holistic health, longevity, and natural, very simple habits that help you maintain physical, mental, and emotional balance. So pay close attention and share this information with your family and friends to help them improve their health. We upload new videos every day, so subscribe and turn on notifications to make sure you don't miss any updates. Let's get started. For a long time, colon cancer was thought to be a disease that affected only older adults. However, the reality is that it is appearing more and more frequently in people between the ages of 20 and 50. This is not because our genetics have suddenly changed, but because in just one generation, our lifestyle habits and our intestinal health have been profoundly transformed. The good news is that the body is wise. When something is not right, it usually sends early warning signs. The problem is that no one taught us how to observe them or give them the importance they deserve. That's why today I want to explain 10 colon warning signs that you should not ignore, especially after the age of 50. I'm Dr. Gabriel Mena, and throughout my clinical practice I have seen many times how these signs appear long before a person imagines that something serious is happening. I remember the case of a 56-year-old patient who came to see me because of constant fatigue. He thought it was just age or stress. No one had paid attention to what his body had been quietly saying for a long time. The first sign I want to talk to you about is anemia. Anemia means that the blood is not carrying enough oxygen. In this context, we are mainly referring to iron deficiency anemia. When the body loses iron, it cannot produce enough red blood cells, and this directly affects your energy and vitality. So what does this have to do with the colon? In some cases, there may be a slow and continuous loss of blood in the digestive system. These losses usually go unnoticed because they do not cause obvious symptoms. When bleeding occurs in the upper part of the digestive tract, such as the stomach, it is often faster and more visible. But when it happens in the colon, the bleeding is so slow that it goes completely unnoticed. When blood loss is rapid, stools often become black and sticky. In contrast, bleeding from the colon is considered occult bleeding, so minimal that it does not clearly change the color of the stool. That is why a person can lose small amounts of blood for years without realizing it. This happens because tumors develop their own network of blood vessels, a process known as angiogenesis. These vessels are usually fragile and very sensitive. Even minimal irritation can cause small amounts of bleeding. The second sign is persistent fatigue. I'm not talking about occasional tiredness, but a level of exhaustion that does not improve with rest. This may be due to anemia, but also to the inflammation that often accompanies these processes. Tumors release chemical substances that affect the mitochondria, which are responsible for producing energy inside your cells. The problem is that this type of fatigue is often attributed to stress, work, or simply getting older. And that is where valuable time is lost. The third sign is a subtle change in stool color, usually a slight darkening. If blood appears very close to the end of the intestine, it is usually seen as red. But when bleeding occurs higher up in the colon, the blood darkens before exiting and mixes with the stool, making the change difficult to notice with the naked eye. In these cases, only a specific test can detect the presence of hidden blood. In addition, this bleeding may come and go. There may be periods when nothing happens, and others when, for example, mild constipation increases friction and triggers bleeding again. The fourth sign has to do with changes in bowel habits. The colon does not work on its own. It is regulated by its own nervous system, called the enteric nervous system, which controls intestinal movement, digestion, and water absorption. A tumor can disrupt this system through pressure, inflammation, or the chemical substances it releases. This can affect how the intestine moves its contents and how much water is absorbed. As a result, episodes of diarrhea, constipation, or an alternation between the two may appear. Understanding all of this is important because colon cancer is one of the most common types of cancer in both men and women, and the numbers continue to rise. In the United States alone, around 150,000 new cases are diagnosed every year, and nearly 50,000 deaths occur. What is most concerning is the steady increase in cases among younger and younger people. If this content is helping you better understand your body's warning signs, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who could benefit from it. Sometimes, a single video reaches exactly the person who needs it most. Many of the signs you are hearing about share a common root. The intestine is an extremely sensitive system. When its balance is disrupted, the body begins to express it in different ways. Understanding this allows you to detect early when something is not working properly and to take action before the problem progresses. Around the world, we are seeing a concerning decline in the diversity of the gut microbiome. In other words, we now have fewer types of beneficial bacteria living in the intestine. This loss of diversity directly affects digestive health. Added to this are the frequent use of antibiotics, increased consumption of ultra-processed foods, and an increasingly sedentary lifestyle. Today, many people spend most of their day sitting in front of screens, with little exposure to the outdoors and limited physical movement. At the same time, chronic stress has become part of everyday life, and metabolic diseases accompanied by inflammation are rising at an alarming rate. All of these factors damage the intestine and contribute to a growing number of serious colon problems, not just in one country, but worldwide. The fifth warning sign is abdominal bloating or feeling full too quickly when eating. This can happen when there is a partial obstruction in the intestine. As a lesion grows, it can narrow the normal passage of intestinal contents and trap gas. This leads to distension, pressure, discomfort, and a constant feeling of heaviness. When intestinal contents have difficulty moving forward, they are forced to slow down and find alternative paths. This slower transit promotes excessive fermentation, which is not healthy. During this process, harmful bacteria increase and more gas is produced. As a result, you may feel full after eating very little, even though your digestive system is not yet ready to properly process food. The body interprets this situation as early satiety. I remember a 62-year-old patient who told me he could no longer finish his meals. He thought his stomach had simply shrunk with age. In reality, his body was responding to a problem that had been developing quietly for quite some time. The sixth sign is called tenesmus. It is an intense and persistent sensation of needing to have a bowel movement, but when going to the bathroom, evacuation is minimal or does not occur at all. The person feels as if they have not completely emptied their bowels and, shortly afterward, feels the same urgency again. This symptom is common when there are lesions in the final sections of the colon, such as the rectum or sigmoid colon. The large intestine is divided into several sections, and in its final segments are the receptors that send the signal to the brain that it is time to go to the bathroom. When something occupies space in that area, such as a tumor, these receptors are activated even when there is no real need to evacuate. Normally, that signal appears when the intestine fills with stool. But if there is a mass creating constant pressure, the body interprets that pressure as an urgent need to go, even after you have already been to the bathroom. That is why the sensation of incomplete evacuation persists. The seventh sign is a constant thinning of the stool. If this happens occasionally, it may not be very significant. We have all experienced episodes where stool shape changes. However, when stools become persistently thin, almost pencil-like, it is a sign that deserves attention. This usually indicates that there is an obstruction preventing the normal passage of intestinal contents. In order to move forward, the stool adapts and changes shape. In more severe cases, when the passage is significantly compromised, transit can almost come to a stop. In response, the body tries to make evacuation easier by retaining water. By softening the stool through increased water content, the intestine attempts to allow it to pass. Many people who later receive a serious diagnosis recall having these kinds of changes for months, long before they noticed pain or bleeding. The eighth sign is an even more pronounced and persistent change in bowel rhythm. This may involve more severe constipation or repeated episodes of difficulty evacuating. When intestinal contents cannot move properly, irritation of the intestinal lining occurs. As a defense mechanism, the intestine alters water absorption in an attempt to compensate and allow elimination. Everything I am explaining is not meant to alarm you, but to help you understand how the body gives clear warnings when we learn to listen. These signs are all part of the same thread, and when viewed together, they provide valuable information about colon health. If you have been noticing digestive changes for some time, such as alternating between diarrhea and constipation without a clear cause, and you are unsure whether to take them seriously, this content can help you understand what may be happening and which signals you should not ignore. Today we are talking precisely about those colon warnings that many people minimize after the age of 50 and that are important to recognize early in order to better protect your health. When episodes of diarrhea and constipation alternate, it is easy to think it is just stress or diet-related. However, it is important for you to know that different colon conditions can produce very similar symptoms. That is why, beyond what you feel, it is essential to understand the underlying mechanisms in order to correctly interpret what the body is trying to tell us. These types of alterations can appear in situations such as intestinal obstruction, but also in less serious conditions like irritable bowel syndrome or chronic inflammatory bowel diseases. All of these require medical attention, although they are not as severe as cancer. Even so, there are warning signs that deserve special vigilance. Number 9 is seeing traces of blood in the toilet or on toilet paper after a bowel movement. This is a sign that should never be ignored. In some cases, that blood may indicate that the lesion is close to the anus. When bleeding occurs in that area, the blood does not have time to darken or break down, which is why it often appears red in the toilet water. In more advanced situations, the bleeding may be heavier and appear quickly and clearly. If the bleeding is more abundant or very close to the exit, the blood may look bright red because it has just occurred. Here I want you to understand something key. Tumors are made up of the body's own cells, but cells that have undergone genetic changes. They have lost their normal organization. Healthy tissue is well structured, with defined and orderly layers, while tumor tissue is not. Cancer cells are disorganized and fragile. Precisely because of this lack of structure, they can bleed easily even in early stages. As the tumor grows and cellular generations pass, the tissue becomes increasingly chaotic. The more aggressive the process, the more unstable the cells become. They break more easily and can detach, facilitating spread. That is why large, disorganized tumors tend to bleed more. However, bleeding alone does not tell us everything. It is important to carefully observe what appears in the toilet or on toilet paper, because it is often confused with hemorrhoids, which are by far the most common cause of anal bleeding. Still, the key is not to normalize it without proper evaluation. The 10th sign is weight loss, especially when it happens quickly and without explanation. You have not gone on a diet, you have not fasted, you have not increased exercise, and yet the weight drops. There simply does not seem to be a clear reason. This weight loss often happens effortlessly and in a short period of time. It can have several causes. One of them is hormonal imbalance. Tumors can release substances that disrupt the body's hormonal balance. Some of these directly affect appetite, causing you to eat less without realizing it. A person may think they are eating normally, but in reality the amount is insufficient. Other substances can increase inflammation and accelerate muscle loss. This leads the body to start breaking down its own tissue while also struggling to build new muscle. An accelerated metabolism may also develop, where the body burns energy excessively, rapidly losing muscle and fat. In addition, tumors, especially as they grow, demand large amounts of nutrients. One of their typical characteristics is uncontrolled growth. They grow as fast as possible and, in doing so, draw resources away from the body. At the same time, the digestive system stops functioning as it should. The intestine no longer absorbs nutrients as efficiently or processes food the way it used to. When all of these factors come together, we are facing a late and serious warning sign. It is a situation that profoundly affects quality of life and is often difficult to reverse. In medicine, this advanced state is known as cachexia, a syndrome in which the body progressively and generally weakens. I have seen this in my practice. I remember a patient who came in concerned only because he had lost a lot of weight without trying. He felt no pain and did not look ill, but something was not right. Because he chose not to ignore that signal and sought help in time, we were able to investigate the cause and act before the problem progressed further. Cases like this remind us how important it is to listen to the body and not dismiss changes that are not normal. If you found this content helpful, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who may need it, leave your comment, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the videos we upload every day. Here we work to help you better understand your body and make more informed decisions about your health. And before we say goodbye, I invite you to take a moment of gratitude. To thank God for life, for the body we have, and for the opportunity to learn and gain knowledge that allows us to take better care of ourselves and live with greater quality and peace. On this channel, Dr. Gabriel Mena and our entire team are deeply grateful to be able to contribute to your well-being, help you improve habits, and accompany you with clear and practical information. Tomorrow we will have a new video created especially for you, so I look forward to seeing you again as we continue taking care of your health and the health of those you love most.